I'm Ellen Taylor. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Engagement here at WSU. And this is the second in a series of positive mental health events that we are sponsoring this year. We're doing at least one event every month that classes are in, and this is the second, as I said. December, keep an eye out for Sweat the Stress Week. We've got a whole bunch of events that are going to be going on all around campus that are all around managing your stress and taking care of yourself while you tackle those finals during that week. And then in January, we have Ross Zabo coming. There'll be more about that. Keep an eye out for that information. And in February, we have Derek Greenfield, and then more and more stuff the rest of the spring semester. So I wanted to let you know about that. With no further ado, I have to read part of this because it goes on a bit in a good way. So I'm super pleased and excited to be introducing and welcoming Michelle Poehler to Washington State University. Go Cougs. Michelle is the founder of the Hello Fears movement and has been featured on CNN, CBC, BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, and The Today Show, among many others. She's been invited to speak at companies such as Facebook, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, and many more. When we were looking for a positive mental health speaker, we looked at her stuff online, and we were like, yeah, she's got to come and talk to us. This woman is full of energy and passion, and she has a great story, and I ask you to please join me in welcoming Michelle Poehler to WSU.
To those who dance, I saw you. To those who didn't dance, actually the idea was for no one to dance, so you did great, because I'm here to talk about the comfort zone, and you look so comfortable right now. So that's awesome. So raise your hand if you thought that was a little bit awkward. Oh, that's awkward too. Right, this is not supposed to feel comfortable for you, not even for me. Actually, my husband challenged me to start. I need water. Wait. Yeah, too much dancing. Better. Wait, more. All right. So my husband challenged me to start this presentation dancing all crazy, and of course I said no. But then he repeated my same speech back to me, and I had no option but to say yes, and you will see why in a little bit. But before we get into that, I want you to think about your earliest memory of fear. Do you remember a fear you had when you were very little, like 2, 3, 4 years old? Yeah, you're saying yes. What was your biggest fear? The dark. Who else was afraid of the dark? Yeah, it was terrible. Okay, everybody. What other fear do you have? Who wants to share one more fear? Maybe spiders. I'm still afraid of those, right? Yeah, those are terrifying. So my earliest memory of fear goes all the way back to when I was 3 years old. And I still remember how terrified I was to walk down the aisle. Not as the bride, but as the flower girl, of course. Right? You would assume that a 3-year-old girl would be delighted to wear a big white puffy dress just like the bride and throw petals everywhere, right? Well, not me. I was afraid to walk by myself and not be able to find my mom at the end of the aisle. So at the age of 7, 4 years after that picture was taken, I was still a pretty shy kid, pretty fearful. So my mom, she thought that maybe my shyness was not emotional, right? So she took me to the doctor, and she found out that I couldn't see, like at all. I needed glasses. For 7 years, she didn't realize that. Thank you, Mom. Seriously. So basically, my comfort zone was defined by a 10-foot radius circle that surrounded my mom or my dad. But the truth is that we all have a comfort zone, and we know it pretty well because we live there most of the times. So we know it pretty well. We know exactly where it starts, where it ends, and they are unique to each individual, just like your personality or your body is. So the things that are uncomfortable to me may be things that you can easily do. Like, for example, eating an oyster. I don't know if you've tried one of those. I did, and then I couldn't, so I had to spit it out. And they're so expensive, I had to try the same one over and over again. Yeah, it was not pretty. It was so uncomfortable. Also, I don't know if you've tried this, but getting a Brazilian wax. Oh my God, that's not only embarrassing and uncomfortable, but it's really painful. And lastly, I don't know if you've heard about slow rafting, but it's just like regular rafting, except that nothing ever happens unless you try to take a selfie. But good news is that comfort zones can change from one day to the other. They can expand as we face our fears or contract as we limit ourselves. So by the age of 26, I had such a reduced comfort zone that if I kept going in that direction, I was going to end up being afraid to leave my apartment by age 60. And it's not like I was afraid of 1, 2, or 3 things. I was actually afraid to feel the fear. So at a very young age, I understood exactly the limits to my comfort zone, and I made sure that no matter what I did, I would never go past it. And so every single choice that I made growing up was based on fear. Like, I would grow apart from friends who owned big dogs to become closer to those who had turtles or fish as pets. And I constantly reminded myself, TGIF. Thank God I'm female. I thought if I was a boy, I would have been bullied like crazy for being so fearful, right? I grew up thinking that it was okay for girls to have fears and show them, while boys should be strong, brave, and tough. But did you know that girls and boys have pretty much the same amount of fears? The difference is that society has allowed girls to show them and expects boys to hide them. So I never hid the fact that I was scared of things. Are you kidding? It was the perfect excuse to stay away from uncomfortable situations. But now I realize that I was just being cowardly sexist against my own gender as a way to shelter myself from the world. But don't get me wrong, it's not like I had a miserable childhood or anything. Actually, I had a pretty decent life growing up. I had a nice group of friends, nice family, passion for art, good grades in school. I was achieving things, or I thought I was. To me, life felt like a checklist that I had to go through according to society's expectations. Graduate from high school? Check. Get into college? Check. Find prestigious job, get married, buy a home, have kids, right? I was doing everything I was expected to until it hit me. Who am I checking these boxes for? Who am I truly living for? Because I see that my parents, my professors, my mentors, they're all certainly happy with my outcome, but am I? I can say that I'm comfortable, but can I say I'm genuinely happy? So a couple of years ago, I realized that I had 2 options. I could continue checking society's boxes like it was expected of me. I mean, I was already married. I had to start having kids, buy a home, have grandkids, and die, right? Like, I don't know what's in between those boxes, so that's what I thought. Or I could have the courage to create my own set of boxes and pursue those as well. Move to New York, give a TED Talk, become an entrepreneur, travel the world, write a book, impact others. So I had to start somewhere. And moving to New York is something I've always wanted to do since I was very little, but I never really dared to until a couple of years ago. So raise your hand if you've ever thought about living in New York City. All right, a couple of you, that's great. So yeah, this was my dream since I was like very, very little. So I went to New York to do a master's in branding at the School of Visual Arts. And I'm not going to lie, it was not easy at first. I kept trying to control everything around me, and I quickly realized New York is not for the fearful. But I was there with one mission, right, to graduate from the School of Visual Arts. And that is when everything changed. Where would you like to be 10 years from today? That's the question that my professor asked us on the first day of class. She challenged me and the rest of the students to think about our perfect lives 10 years from that day And at that moment, I knew that I was about to have a panic attack. Who here has done something like this where you try to plan your life ahead? Yeah, let me tell you one thing about it. It's freaking scary because you want to dream big, but not too much. You want to sound ambitious, but humble. You start dreaming of a 150-foot yacht, and somewhere down the line, you settle for a freaking kayak. Right? You don't want to disappoint future you with big plans that went nowhere and then feel like a big failure. So I started to write down semi-ambitious things that I thought could make me happy 10 years from that day. I wrote down things like, in 10 years, after working for the best companies in New York, I finally become an entrepreneur. I'm working with Adam, my husband, on developing our business, whatever it is. We travel a lot together for work, and we love it. We're being invited to speak at companies and events about our accomplishments over the years, and we're buying our first apartment in Manhattan. So that's what I wrote in April of 2015, and this is what happened next. In July of that same year, I decided to start my own movement, so I had to leave my job in advertising to do this. In October, I gave my first TEDx talk, and shortly after, I started receiving invitations to speak at schools, companies, events, and organizations around the world. In July of the following year, Adam quit his job to join me full-time on developing our business, and then a year later, we bought this beautiful apartment in the Lower East Side in Manhattan. I'm kidding. Yeah, it's not really my apartment. It's actually Taylor Swift's. It's so nice, right? Yeah, this is us like hanging out in her living room. Yeah, we do that every Friday, yeah. So besides the apartment, I accomplished most of the things that I wrote down in a matter of months. And as far as the apartment goes, we actually did the opposite. We realized we didn't need a place because we were traveling so much from one event to the other, so we decided to become nomads for a whole year. So if you've never thought about planning your life ahead, like writing an essay about it or something, you should really consider it because it is extremely powerful. But you can't visualize things and then go eat a sandwich. You kind of need to prove to the universe how much you want the things you envision. And to do so, you need to get uncomfortable. So right after writing my plan in April of 2015, the professor asked us to identify one crucial obstacle that could get in the way of our 10-year plan. And when I realized that fear was the one thing that could keep me from achieving my dreams, I embarked on a project that changed my life for good. It is called a 100-day project. And what this is about is you just have to choose one thing that you want to do repeatedly for 100 days in a row. It can be anything as long as it's something that helps you grow or improve in some way. And this was the third part of this assignment. So first we had to write a 10-year plan, then we had to identify what is that crucial obstacle that could get in the way. Finally, we had to start a 100-day project of our choice. So to give you a couple of examples from other people in the class, my friend Kyle did 100 inventions. Every day he would sketch a prototype of something that could make his life easier and the world a better place. My friend Maddie, who used to wear heavy makeup every day of her life, and I'm not exaggerating, the day that she took this picture, she was going to the gym, right? So she realized she had a problem and she decided to break up with makeup for 100 days and take good care of her skin. And by the end of the 100 days, her face was looking so nice. She didn't even need any makeup to look beautiful. And I decided to become a braver person, not only for myself, but for my family, for my future kids. I come from a family of World War II survivors, where half of my family were killed by the Nazis in concentration camps. My grandparents were lucky. They were able to escape and start a new life from scratch in Venezuela, where I'm from. But their fears never went away. In fact, they were carried from generation to generation, so my mom was raised with lots of fears, and so was I. So when I heard about the 100-day project, I thought this is the perfect opportunity for me to go after my fears, break my family's fear chain, right, and do something for me. So I decided to face 100 fears in a period of 100 days and document the entire process on YouTube, from the smallest things that were limiting my everyday life to fears I never thought I would be able to conquer.
Michelle Poler decided that she was sick of living her life in fear of the unknown and the unexpected, so she decided to embrace it. Every day for 100 days, she's pledged to do something that scares her.
I'm here with Michelle Poler in Times Square, New York City, where she is living 100 days without fear.
100 miedos en 100 días.
Michelle decided to spend 100 days conquering her fears. 100 days. What I really believe that Michelle is experiencing is tapping into her inner strength that was there all along.
So if you thought that facing those fears was scary, uploading the videos to YouTube, that was a whole fear by itself. Have you ever tried to upload a video to YouTube of yourself? It's terrifying. Picture this. One night, I decided I wanted to face my fear of singing in public. So I chose the one place where they had a real band, a real stage, and a real crowd. But as I was going through the list of songs, what I realized is that the only song that I know from their entire list is Rolling in the Deep, right? By Adele. She's the best singer in the world. I'm not. So when they called my name, my heart was about to jump off my chest, but I was there. I was determined to face my fear. So I went up there, grabbed my mic, started my song, and shortly after, I realized how bad of a singer I am, right? And I had to finish the entire song, and those were the longest 3 minutes and 49 seconds of my life. But as soon as the song was finally over, I could hear one person clapping and screaming my name from across the room. You guessed it, my husband was there. So if you thought that this was the scary part of the challenge, that was just the easy part. The scary part comes when I have to go home, sit through my horrible footage, edit my video, and upload that thing to YouTube for the entire world to see. But as I was editing the video, I thought to myself, Michelle, calm down. Maybe it's not that bad.
We could have had it.
Amazing, right? Yeah. I showed this to Adam, and he was like, seriously? This doesn't even count as a fear. You're clearly replacing your voice with Adele's. And he's not a big Adele fan, so I figured that if he noticed, maybe more people could notice. So I had to go back, re-edit the video, and this is what I actually uploaded to YouTube. So bad. It's embarrassing. So yes, YouTube can be pretty intimidating, but it can also be a fascinating tool that can help you inspire, entertain, even teach something to someone from one side of the world to the other. And it was thanks to YouTube that my project went viral. Like, it got so much attention. Imagine day 40 of the project. I wake up, check my phone, and the first thing I see is my face all over the internet. Every website started sharing my story, my project, and also celebrities started sharing it as well. Ashton Kutcher, Sofia Vergara, Zoe Deschanel, and for some reason, even the rapper Lil Wayne thought it was inspiring. Yes. So this was not the best part. Actually, shortly after this happened, I started to receive messages from people all over the world saying that thanks to my project, they were inspired to go after their own fears and change their lives. And that's something I was not expecting when I started this very personal project. But you know, when you get so much attention from the media, you not only get love and support like you're hoping. Have you heard of trolls? Yeah? And I don't mean the movie, like real trolls. They live on the internet and they're seriously mean. And yeah, another fear to add to my list, right? Fear of criticism. Raise your hand if you like being criticized. No one, of course, heck no. But yeah, it was, to be honest with you, it was pretty hurtful. And I felt bullied and attacked as I was reading those mean comments online. And the sad thing is that it was not only people online. I also started hearing comments from people around me, right? People that were not supportive of what I was doing. I was hearing things like, Michelle, she's not going to finish that project, or anyone could face those fears. Guys, you know what? Haters gonna hate. And you can't allow that to get in the way of your dreams or to define you in any way. But not because of that, you have to ignore criticism. Not at all. Actually, we have to be smart about criticism and use it to our advantage. So these are the things that I do when I hear some sort of criticism, or like if there is constructive criticism or even negative comments. The first thing I do is I ask myself the question, is this true, right? And then I try to be really honest with myself, even if it hurts. So it's really important that at this point, you know, you hear someone saying something about you, it is hurtful, but ask yourself, is this true? And then the thing I do right after that is I start to think about the person who is saying that, right? What is his or her situation? What are some of their struggles? What are they going through? Because that helps me create some distance between me and the person, right? And the comments, so I don't take it so personally. Because some people, they just judge from their own perspective, and we can't just, you know, take it in, all of the comments that we hear. Then I have to make a choice, right? Do I listen to this comment, or do I ignore the comment? Because if the comment is coming from an honest place, a genuine place, and it is true, at least some percentage of it, you may want to listen, right? Because it can help you improve in some way. But if the comment is coming from a very narrow perspective, very close-minded mentality, maybe you just want to ignore it and then go to the last step, which is take action. Because what I do is I use criticism as fuel, either as a way to improve whatever I'm doing, or as a way to double down on what I'm already doing, because I truly believe in what I'm doing at that point. And that is what I decided to do. I decided to prove haters wrong, prove myself right, and go after my biggest fears.
Oh my god, I'm really scared of this one.
These are some of the folks that we have here today.
So when a friend suggested that I should pose in front of a drawing class, first I actually doubted if we were friends, right? Who would say that? I completely freaked out on her. I'm like, don't talk to me ever again. But then I realized that my reaction was a clear sign that I was terrified of facing that fear. And since I really wanted to prove haters wrong at that point, I said, let's do it. So I decided to go, and obviously I asked Adam, my husband, to join me so he can help me with the video. And he said no, because he was more scared and uncomfortable than I was. I don't know how. So I went by myself, and there I was, standing in a room in front of a dozen people I've never seen in my life, wearing only that weird robe that I brought with me. And in that moment, the professor asked me to start. I had no idea what to do. My first reaction was to turn around and face the wall, because I just couldn't face the students as I was dropping my robe on the floor. And so the first couple of poses, I kept just covering myself as much as possible, right? I was like, hi, yeah. Because I kept thinking that the students were judging me, when in reality, they were there to fulfill their mission, to create beautiful art out of whoever posed for them. And that made me realize how self-centered we sometimes are, and how hard we are on ourselves. Turns out, no one's judging us the way that we judge ourselves. And that day, as I was so worried about exposing my body, there was this one guy who spent the entire class drawing face. Oh no. Okay, so you can't see. There, here you go. Right? The entire class, every single different pose that I was doing, he was just doing my face. And that really left me thinking that day. So one of the funnest challenges that I faced was dancing in the middle of Times Square like no one's watching. But at first, this was horrifying because I was the only one listening to the music. So can you imagine my embarrassment? I was freaking out at first, but then a couple of seconds into the song, I really started to enjoy the music, the moment, the mood. And at that point, when I was actually enjoying what I was doing, other people started joining me. And suddenly, this became a party in the middle of Times Square. And that day, I got to experience what living life to the fullest feels like for the first time in my life. And what I learned is that it only happens when we do the things we love like no one's watching. So whatever it is that you love to do, try doing it like no one's watching, because that way you will enjoy the moment way more and you will feel so good about it. And you will even feel like you're living life to the fullest like I did that day. So that day, I not only made new friends, realized how much I enjoy dancing, mostly in public, and I created one of the most memorable videos for my channel.
We're here at Times Square, a lot of people around me, and I'm going to dance like no one's watching. So I have my music here, I'm ready to go dancing. Let's do this.
Fear achieved.
Now, one of the hardest fears that I faced was my fear number 95, jumping from a high cliff into the water. Picture this. This day, I decided to rent a car, drive for 2 hours to a water park where I could safely face my fear without hitting a rock, because that was not the challenge that day. It was just jumping from the cliff. And so we get to the place, I go all the way up the hill, make the line, it's my turn, I'm about to jump, and in that moment, I freeze. Ma'am, are you jumping or not? The lifeguard was frustrated because there was a huge line of kids eager to run, jump, and make a splash, and there I was completely frozen. I kept telling my feet to jump, but they wouldn't listen. Have you ever felt like this, paralyzed by fear? Yep, right, so that's how I was feeling. And then the lifeguard comes back and he's like, dude, even the little kids are jumping. And I'm like, that's so helpful, thank you, seriously. But then a girl about this height comes all the way to the front of the line, and she was terrified. She was like shivering and having second thoughts, just like I was. But then she approached the edge, she closed her eyes, and a couple of seconds later, she jumped. And right there, I felt so inspired. I thought, if she did it, why can't I? So I approached the edge one more time. The lifeguard rolled his eyes one more time. And I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4 for some reason. And I jumped. And that day, I learned the important difference between fearless and brave. Brave means that despite the fear, you have the courage to take action. And that is way more powerful and inspiring than being fearless. Just think about it, right? To that story in the cliff, I kept seeing all those little kids jumping fearlessly, and I was so not inspired by them. It was that girl who showed me her fear, right, in the most vulnerable state that you could see it, and then she was able to show me her courage. That not aim to be fearless in any way, but we can all be brave, and courage is contagious. And now, for my 100th fear, I was approached by this brand who wanted to sponsor my 100th fear. And my first reaction was to be excited and aboard, right? Until I realized they wanted to have me rappel down from Rockefeller Center in New York City. Yes, and you know what? I still wanted to do it because what a great opportunity to have, a brand sponsoring my project. It was going to be my first ever brand collaboration, so I was about to say yes, but something deep down didn't feel right. Because from the beginning, I said that I wanted my last challenge to go beyond a physical fear and have a more meaningful impact. So after much consideration, I decided to decline the brand's offer. And instead, I faced one of my biggest fears, public speaking in front of hundreds of thousands, because that was the only way that I could share my story with the world and inspire millions to go after their fears. And this decision not only marked the beginning of my speaking career, but it showed me the importance of going after the things that feel right in our hearts, not being carried away by what may seem more glamorous. So let me take you back to the day when I faced my 100th fear. So in that moment, my heart was beating so loud that I could almost hear it. Can you almost hear it? Right? It was so loud. So at that point, the girl that is walking along with me, her only job was to make sure that I'm all doing all right, that I'm fine. But when she looks at me and she realizes I'm about to freak out, she grabs my shoulders and she's like, Michelle, sweetie, it'll be fine, really. Plus, what's the worst that can happen? Raise your hand if you've ever asked yourself or someone else this question before. Worst question ever. I now had 1,000 negative thoughts running through my head. Because I was like, yeah, she's right, what's the worst that can happen? And then I'm like, oh, I can forget my speech, I can freeze, I can embarrass myself, I can disappoint my family who's in the audience and a bunch of other people who are watching my 100th fear, right? And then the worst one, what if I fail? So that's when it hit me. How am I supposed to gather the courage that I need if I'm only considering the worst case scenarios? It was only when I decided to flip the question around and I asked myself, Michelle, what's the best that can happen? That's when I started to see the possibilities that were hiding behind my fear. And I thought, what if I do a good job? What if I enjoy it? What if the audience likes it and they laugh and they engage? What if I make my family proud and myself proud? What if I actually encourage people in the audience to take action? In that moment, I felt no more fear, only excitement. And that's when I heard the presenter say, give it up for Michelle Poler. Today, right here, right now, I'm facing my 100th fear. Started this project, that's the face you make if you face 100 fears, just so you know. So when I first started the project, I thought that the end goal was to eliminate fear, get rid of it, right? But along the process, I realized that fear is our ally and is there to keep us safe and alive. So we kind of don't want to eliminate fear, but the more we say yes to new experiences and to new opportunities, the more we allow other emotions to jump in. And some of these emotions I never even experienced before in my life. The important thing here is to make sure that we can keep fear in its place and not let it spill over into the other emotions. Because by doing this, I was able to expand my comfort zone to new frontiers. Things I wouldn't dare to try a year ago became my favorite food. My fear of doing public speaking became my career, and saying yes, my favorite new answer. So as a way to better understand my fears, what I did is I divided them into 3 categories: universal, cultural, and personal fears. Turns out we're all born with a set of universal fears. So it doesn't matter where you're from or how old you are, you're probably afraid of either snakes, needles, or the very popular one, heights. So raise your hand if you are at least afraid of one of these. And you should be afraid of them because they can kill you. You have to be so careful when you do those, okay? And so that's good. You have to listen to your universal fears because they're there to keep us safe and alive. So yeah, listen to those. But as we grow, we develop a series of cultural fears that revolve around our need for love and belonging. And these are the ones that are screwing us up big time. So society creates, every culture basically has their own set of rules and expectations from society. Don't do this, don't say that, don't wear that. So society creates fears to make us behave in a certain way and shape our personality to fit its standards. So the fear of not belonging, not fitting in, not being loved or accepted are dictating the majority of the choices we make and the way we present ourselves to others. And I get it, belonging can be amazing. It's what enables community, friendship, team building. But if we're not careful, our need to fit in may hurt our authenticity. And we live in a time where authenticity is one of the most valuable assets that anyone could have. And I'll share a story about the time when I started speaking, right? When 2 years ago, I started this career called motivational speaking, right? As a way to spread my message with more people and inspire more people to take action, right? And one of the first gigs that I got was at ESPN. They brought me for one of their large events, and I was excited to go, but very nervous, obviously. But then something happened before it was my turn to speak that took all of my confidence away. The speaker that went right before me was one of the most spectacular speakers that you could think of. She's a vice chairman, her name is Carla, and she's real, and she's a vice chairman at Morgan Stanley, and she's a renowned author, right? So she has a book, and oh my God, like this woman, she was eloquent, witty, insightful, experienced, everything you want from a speaker. And the more I heard her present, the more I kept comparing myself to her, until I started to feel like the biggest imposter in the room, hoping not to get caught during my presentation. So at the end of the day, I was ready to go home, and then we received a text from the organizer of the event inviting us to a happy hour event, which I was hesitant to go, and so glad that I went. That night, so many people approached me to tell me that I was the highlight of the day for them, that I was perceived as a real person they could identify with. And at that point, I realized that my imposter syndrome was making me believe that I needed to be more like Carla to be appreciated, when in reality, I just needed to become myself and own what makes me authentic, which reminds me of a few words from Steven Pressfield in his book, The War of Art. Our job in this lifetime is not to shape ourselves into some ideal we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. You see, when I was comparing myself to Carla and other speakers out there, I couldn't really find my place. I even thought I had no place in this industry, and I was about to just retire by the beginning of this new career. It was only when I decided to contrast instead of compare that I started to stand out and understand what was my place, and I was able to own what makes me authentic, right? So if you look at the screen, you see the triangles, right? Is there one that stands out the most for you? One pink triangle right there? Yeah, that's what I wanted to become. I wanted to become the pink triangle in a world of black and white. And that's what I want you to become as well. So I want you to look around, and when you're doing something like applying to a job, asking out someone on a date, or presenting in class, instead of looking to compare, try to contrast with the rest of the world. But to do that, the one thing you have to actually do is have the courage to believe in yourself. That is the only way that we get to contrast, right? We have to get vulnerable, have a lot of courage, and go with what we think is okay, not what everybody else is doing. And that is what I did, and this takes us to our personal fears that are closely related to our self-esteem need. So in order to feel good about ourselves, we limit our growth. We hold ourselves back from taking risks, from trying new things, or venturing into the unknown, because we know failing is a possibility, one that we don't want to be held accountable for. But after embracing this new lifestyle, where daring is now my first choice, what I learned is that the enemy of success is actually not failure. Can you guess what it is? Yes, it's actually comfort. Comfort is what keeps us from raising our hands to suggest the next big idea. It convinces us to stay with partners we no longer love and in places we cannot get much out of. Comfort begs us to watch one more episode instead of facing the blank canvas on our blog. And it tells us things like, good things come to those who wait. But as Da Vinci put it, people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. So this takes me to my day 101. I already faced my 100th fear, delivered my speech. Now what, right? People were asking me, and I had no idea. I had no clue what was going to happen next. I basically thought that I could just go back to my career in advertising, right? I was doing fine, I guess, before, so I could always go back to that. But then Adam comes and he's like, Michelle, what if you continue growing this movement that you already started, you turn it into something bigger, and then you make this your job? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome, but what the heck is this, right? Like, I don't see anything. Literally, there's just air. You're not pointing at anything. And I had no idea I kind of knew what he was talking about, right? And so at that point, I just started going through a roller coaster of emotions, and I don't really like roller coasters. Yeah, can you see my face? Right, and can you see Adam's face? He's like having so much fun. And this other guy, he was having so much fun. And then I'm like dying over here, because I don't like roller coasters, and I really don't like emotional roller coasters either, because one second I'm excited about the possibility of traveling all over the world, inspiring people, but the next second I'm eaten alive by the fear of failing miserably. And in that moment, I read this quote by Dr. Abraham Maslow, and everything made sense, right? He said, you will either step forward into growth, or you will step back into comfort. And this hit home so hard, because what I realized is that going back to my old job, right, that was my first option at that point, that was just a decision based on fear and comfort. I would only choose that because I was too afraid to go with option number 2, building my own movement, which was a decision based on growth and progress. Life will always give us options. Some will take us back into our comfort zone, others will challenge us but help us grow. The important thing here is to make sure that we can identify which one is the growth choice and go with that one, despite the fear that it may bring. In fact, that's the best way to tell them apart. Most of the times, the growth choice is the scariest one. So growth could mean anything from creating your own boxes, right? As I was telling you at the beginning, how you have society's boxes, you have your own boxes, go for it, right? Create your own boxes, not your parents, not society's, and then check those boxes over time. It could also be about joining an organization now that you're still in college, something like maybe a club that sparks your curiosity. Take advantage of the fact that you're here to start exploring new things. Or it could even be about launching your own personal development project like I did. For me, my current growth move that I started not too long ago is all about writing my own book. It's my first book. I am not a writer, so this is extremely challenging, but I can identify that this is my growth move at this point. And what I learned is that the more uncomfortable we get, the greater the reward. And in order to find out if it's worth it to go after those fears, take the risk, right, identify the rewards, what I do is I ask myself the question again and again, what's the best that can happen? I write down a list of all the possible rewards, and if they're worth it, I focus on those to take action. That is the only tool that helps me put my fear away, focus on my reward, and go for it. Now, by doing this, by focusing on the rewards, I was able to turn a school project into a movement, right? A social movement that is encouraging people all over the world to say hello to their fears. And I would love for you to be part of this movement.
Hey Michelle, my name is Marcin and I'm from Poland.
My name is Evelyn Lawrence.
Jason Silva.
Hey, it's Chris Gillibo, and I'm from everywhere.
Panama.
Colorado.
Canada.
Caracas, Venezuela.
Africa.
I'm Dutch, but I live in the south of Spain.
I faced the fear of writing to a girl with whom I haven't spoken to for a very long time.
I faced my fear of
traveling solo on a 3-month trip.
Fear of rejection.
Like I'm not good enough.
My fear of birds. Was skydiving.
Cliff diving.
Get this pixie haircut.
Dance like nobody's watching.
Starting over at 29 years old. Me against the world.
Volunteering abroad for 6 months.
I wanted to do something more meaningful and I switched career.
I faced my fear of leaving home.
Of moving away from home.
Start from scratch for the second time.
I was deathly afraid of speaking in public.
Following my passion, pursuing my bliss, right? Living within the confines of my inspiration and somehow trusting that things will work out in the end.
The biggest fear that I faced is living alone, all by myself, with my own thoughts, and it's felt amazing.
It felt terrific.
Awesome. I feel passionate.
Young, amazing.
And I feel free.
So-fulfilled.
Felt so satisfying.
I have done more living in the last 3 years than I have in 33.
Came home, felt more like myself than I have in a really long time.
I feel so good now.
I'm so grateful because my husband and children helped me cross that bridge.
And how I've felt since? Fantastic.
I learned to love myself as I am.
Now it's time for my big fears.
So my question for you today is, what would you get uncomfortable for? What is that thing you care so much about that you're willing to get uncomfortable to make it happen? And before I forget, I want to send you all of my slides. So if you want to receive an email tonight with all of them, a workbook and a few other goodies, just take your phones out and text the word BRAVE to the number 66866, and I'll share all of that with you, and then you'll have my email in case you also want to share anything with me, have any questions, or just keep in touch. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to text that. Everybody now to stand up. Yay! This is about to get awesome. I hate it when speakers make me stand up. You too, right? It's awful. I hate it. All right, so when I started the presentation, I was like the only one dancing, and that was so unfair. So unfair, let me tell you. And I get it. You were like so fearful, but now you're so brave because you listened to this. And so I want you to show me your best moves. Are you ready? Yeah? We'll do a boomerang of this, so you have to like really move. Adam, you'll do a boomerang. Okay, 1, 2.
Tú eres la máquina de baile. Si no tiene a nadie, vente pa' mi brazo, caile. Ese perfume se siente en el aire. Algo como Argentina, tú me traes los Buenos Aires. Tienes el toque, toque, toque. Miren el material, edición especial. Tienes el toque, toque, toque. Perdóname, te lo tenía que decir. Dura, dura, dura.
Awesome! That was so great! Thank you all so much. I will share the boomerang with you. Don't worry. Yes, you're in it. And now we have some time for questions. So if you want to stay and ask something, and if you're afraid of asking questions, it's a great time to face a fear. Yes. So just raise your hand, and we have some mics around. Yes. So, who wants to ask the first question? One asks questions. What was the worst fear? Everybody asks that. Okay, I'm not going to answer if you don't ask.
Hello.
Yes. So the worst fear. Wow, that's a really tough question, let me tell you. Thank you for asking. I think that actually the last fear, speaking in public at TEDx stage, that was terrifying for a couple of reasons, because I had a lot of people following by that point. I had a lot of pressure to do a good job. It's not like I'm a random person, no one knows me, and I'll do this TEDx. No, it's like a lot of people just wanting to see what happens on my last year. So I had that much pressure, and I cared so much about it, because I thought, you know what, if I do a good job, and this TEDx it goes well online, imagine the amount of people that it can impact. So I just put all that pressure on myself. It was my first time ever doing public speaking, so I've never done it before. And so that one was terrifying. Like seconds before going on stage, I was really regretting being there. I was like, why did I do this to myself? So I think that was one of the biggest fears. Posing nude was huge, huge.
Shall we got microphones? So instead of calling, we'll go, if we can go around with the microphone. That would be, so people can hear the questions. You are up.
Okay, hi. So I heard you talk a lot about growth and fear and a lot that goes into like doing those things. But what do you have to say about sacrifice, especially for those bigger fears that we may have, especially when it comes to pursuing projects or doing other things like that?
That's a great question that no one ever asked me before, so Adam, take note. It's a great question. Yeah. Sacrifices, I think that is key, because when you want to do something you've never done before, you are sacrificing something that you have. And I love a quote that said something like, it is okay to let go of the life you have right now to, I guess, be part of the life that you actually want to live. And that is what happened to me, right? I had to say goodbye to so many things because I wanted this lifestyle so bad, but I had to sacrifice weekends, for example, and like all sorts of like leisure time. I'm just like working most of the time, but I enjoy my work so much that it doesn't feel like work, right? It just feels like that's my life right now. I get to do it with my husband, so that's pretty cool. And we adore like just traveling from one place to the other, speaking to the youth, to corporations, and getting to know the United States and even abroad. That's been pretty cool. So, but we sacrifice, not living close to our family. Everybody lives in our family, everybody moved to Miami, for example, and we were living in Miami, but we moved to New York because we believed in ourselves and this project so much, but now we don't see them as much as we would like to. We are sacrificing time with friends, we're sacrificing even having a family at this point, right? All of our friends are starting to have kids. Here we are, just the two of us. Would I like to have kids? Yes, but I want so much, right? To keep growing this project that I'm delaying that for now. So it is a matter, you won't ever have everything, right? You always have to sacrifice something in order to get other things. Also, for example, I sacrifice not pleasing my parents, right? They would love for me to just start my family, settle down, stop traveling so they can visit me more often. And it's not happening. This is what I want to do. So I kind of had to sacrifice that for now, and they understood. So that's pretty awesome. But I hope that answers your question. Did it? Yes? Awesome. All right. Yes, sacrifice is very important. Who's next?
Hi. Oh, is it on? Oh, there we go. Hi. Me and my friend Talia were wanting this. Mostly Talia, but I'm asking, where'd you get the money to fund all the fears?
Yeah.
Where did the funds come from?
That is a great question as well. So when I first had the idea to do this project, I told this to Adam. I'm like, what if I start facing all of my fears? We never really consider the amount of money that goes into a project like this one. And we were so excited. We're like, yes, let's do it. He was like mostly having fun, and I was terrified all the time. But we both wanted to go and do all these different things. So we started doing it ourselves, funding the project ourselves with our savings. But then it started to get really expensive. So around fear 30-something, Adam was like, Michelle, I think we will have to maybe stop the project. Like, this is going out of hand. Maybe you have to start one of those crowdfunding, initiatives, so we get money from people that is already watching and whatever. And days after we had that conversation, the project went viral. So after going viral and getting millions of views on my YouTube channel, we didn't even have to pay for anything till Fear 100. Every single fear that we faced was sponsored by companies. And by that I mean, for example, to do skydiving, which is pretty expensive, we just emailed 3 different companies in New York and we said, hey, would you like to sponsor my jump and Adam's jump for free in exchange of being on my YouTube channel? Like, we would show your logo and recommend your place to other people. And they were all so excited. We just got yeses from every single company. So like car rentals to go to places, going into all those parks, doing all those activities, everything was sponsored, so we didn't have to pay for anything else. But yes, it was very expensive. So I don't recommend doing this in 100 days. That would be crazy. The way that I look at this project is something more like a lifestyle. So every time you have the opportunity to join, one of these trips or do something, an activity, something that is outside of your comfort zone, say yes in the moment, right? And other days, you can just say yes to smaller things, like, for example, saying no, right? Saying no, you have to say yes to say no sometimes. You have to say yes to confrontation, to raising your hand, to suggest an idea, things that don't cost money, right? You can practice all these things on your day-to-day, and then just take it as a life project. But that's a great question. Thank you. Now.
One over here.
Hi, this is really weird. So I came for extra credit, but I didn't really know what the talk was going to be about, but I have really bad anxiety. So I was wondering what you think the first step for doing things like this would be for someone like me.
So 2 things. I think first, starting really small. Like showing, I don't know what your anxieties are, so I can't really suggest the specific things. For example, going by yourself to a place that can be like very comfortable for you, right? But if that's something that makes you uncomfortable, try doing it, at a place that you feel safe, that you feel not too uncomfortable by going by yourself. So it's like starting to do the smaller fears that you can list more often than not. So that is a great way to start. That's how I did it. So if you look at the list of fears, I started very small, just trying oysters. That was like one of my first fears. Holding a cat like this, like just holding it. That was like another fear, because I would have never done it otherwise. So start there. And also another thing that really helped me with my anxiety was therapy. So before moving to New York, just when I even made the decision to go to New York, I started having so much anxiety that I decided to see a therapist and see what happens. And that helped me so much. She started like challenging me to do small things on my job at that point. And I was terrified of doing it, but I was working it with her, and she was so helpful. So now I'm even back going to therapy because I missed it so much. It was so helpful. So that's something I would recommend anybody if you have, the means to do it, the time to do it. I'm sure the school also may help with that. Hope that answers your question.
In the middle.
Who had a question here?
Sorry.
Yes.
Can you just pass this and turn it on when it gets to you, because I didn't want it to be.
You can just.
Oh, there you go.
Did you accomplish or conquer all your fears sober?
Wait, sober?
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny, because getting drunk was one of my fears. Yeah. So I never got drunk in my life because I was too afraid to like mess with my brain, and so I like to be in control a lot. That's why I never did it. Also, I don't like the taste of alcohol, and I'm a very picky eater. So one of the fears was just that. And it didn't like work. I don't know if I did something wrong. It didn't work. But that's a great question. Thank you. First time someone asked that. One more question over here.
Can you take 2 more?
Yes, of course.
Was there a fear that you overcame and you were like, hey, that's not so bad, I kind of like that?
Yeah, actually, a few of those. Definitely public speaking. I keep doing it. And then also dancing in public. I enjoy that so much that I don't mind now dancing in public at all. I've had other people say, would you face that fear again with me? And we've done it again in different parts of New York. So I'm up for it. If you want to face that fear, just let me know. I'll go. So that, and then also trying new things. Because even though I didn't like the oysters, for example, I learned that it is not as bad as I thought. So I used to never try anything before and just say I don't like it. And then now I realize that you have to try things before you say I don't like it. So I just try everything before I just, assume that I don't like something. And I've discovered so many things in my life just through that. So if you give me something I've never tried, I will just try it and see if I like it or not, and then have my own opinion about it. And then holding the tarantula was not too bad. So I even considered getting one for myself. Yeah, and that was not even part of my list of fears. When I started writing it, I was like, I'm not holding that tarantula. Like, that's the one thing I'm not doing. But then I visited my brother in Savannah one day, and his best friend living next door had a pet tarantula. So I said yes, I guess, to that, because it was just there for me to hold it. And it was like awesome, actually. It felt really nice to have the tarantula in my arm. It felt pretty friendly. It turns out they're like elegant and very delicate as they crawl up your arm. It feels nice. So yeah, you see, trying things is important. Yeah, one more. Yes, so I am a graphic designer and art director. That's what I used to do before becoming a speaker, I guess, and having a movement or whatever. And so this is the only time I get to design when I do my slides. So I redo them every day. I add new things, new animations to it. I'm always working on the presentations because I just love doing it myself. And then I've been collaborating also with illustrators. Thanks to Instagram, which is pretty awesome, I get to just, if I find an illustrator that I like, I'm like, hey, would you like to collaborate? And they always say yes. So I'm like, can you do this for me? Illustrate this quote or illustrate the first slide I had up. This is just a random girl I've never met in my life, and she just did that for free for me in exchange for, I guess, promotion and for the sake of collaboration. So use that to your advantage. Instagram, it's a pretty cool tool to just meet people over the internet and create cool stuff together. Thank you. Well, everybody, thank you so much for coming today, and have a great night. Yay! Awesome. And I'll hang around here if you want to approach me for any reason.